Hello again. Welcome back to Kòo-sū, a Taiwanese storytelling experience. I'm Grace Wong Lynch, and I'm pleased to introduce our next reader. Daniel Zarazua is the co-creator of Pochino Press. He's also an educator, a photographer, and a DJ. Hi, Daniel.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here today. I remember that we first met at a NatWa conference a few years ago at a panel about mixed race Taiwanese families, and you yourself are mixed race. I wonder if you could start us off by telling us a little bit about your own background.
Sure. So my mother is Taiwanese. She's from Ilan, and I was actually born in Taipei. And my father is Mexican American. He was there when there were still U.S. military bases there, and so we were that era. And now all the bases are closed down. But on my father's side, we're going on fifth generation Mexican Americans on the Canadian border. So that's a whole other story. But definitely shapes how I think we view the world and our just how we move in this country because we've been here so long on that side of the family.
Yeah.
Of course, on my mother's side, having the immigrant experience is, I don't know, it's been a nice to balance those two out, I think. So,
Yeah, I'm sure you have a lot of different perspectives, and I'm curious what it's been like for you to plug into the Taiwanese American community.
it's definitely evolved, shifted over the years. Like when we settled in the US, because my dad's job, we moved around quite a bit, but we settled in the US when I was about 10. And for a lot of my time, I was in predominantly African American communities. And so,
Mm,
which I think which in my experience, been a lot different from a lot of other Taiwanese Americans I had met. So
yeah.
when I was a kid and a teenager, even my young 20s, sometimes it's really hard to connect because my political lens, my music tastes, my cultural references in the United States were in that framework of African American culture. And I mean, even in college, like I was around Black Greek organizations. Like that
Mm,
was my
hmm.
again my reference point, my experience, and I DJ, and I was deep into hip hop and dance hall and R&B before a lot of those things became pop culture. And more recently, I guess in the last 10, 15 years, I mean, I've done a lot more of going back to Taiwan on my own. So that's helped reconnect with folks. And then I think just the overall climate for Asian Americans has changed. There is some
Yeah.
more visibility. So, of course, not enough, not always the right kind, but at least there's conversations happening that when I was a kid, I just didn't have access to. It was just, I mean, it was Bruce Lee. It was the usuals, right? It was Bruce Lee.
Right. Right.
15,
Yeah.
just like, but
Yeah. And I find it really interesting that you've been doing a lot of writing around your experiences in Taiwan and kind of the Black and Latino communities and other lesser known communities in Taiwan. And I was wondering if you could share some of your writing around that.
yeah, sure. I'd love to really, yeah, appreciate the opportunity to do so. So this is an excerpt from the introduction of the book I'm wrapping up right now. So my perception of Taiwan changed in 2009. It is around this time that I discovered both a Caribbean and a Mexican-owned restaurant in Taipei. Furthermore, I began watching videos of a Taiwanese dancer who specialized in Jamaican reggae dancehall type of dance. I could barely contain my excitement and soon booked a ticket to see what was happening. The restaurants are founded by immigrants, making a long-term stand in Taiwan, and the dancer is a local who shared an interest in an arena that had never encountered with another person of Taiwanese descent. Although I had returned to Taiwan several times over the years, this trip was a true turning point. Despite meeting some interesting people and reconnecting with a good friend, I still didn't feel overly connected to the country prior to 2009. I was too different from most locals and didn't relate to the expats I'd encountered. However, I ended up befriending all of the aforementioned parties, and it reignited my interest in Taiwan and exploring what it meant to be Taiwanese and Taiwanese American. More broadly speaking, it reinforced for me how our identities are constantly in flux. Since that trip, I returned half a dozen times for as much as 6 months at a time, getting deeper and deeper into the Taiwanese community, taking thousands of pictures, having countless conversations, and formally interviewing several people. I was hoping to satisfy my curiosity and yearning about Taiwan, but the exact opposite happened. Taiwan began to feel more and more like home as I dug deeper into its history and culture, and I was more hungry than ever to strengthen my connection. Not surprisingly, as I became more secure in my identity, the more I connected with other Taiwanese Americans back in the United States. One of the things I learned was how much people wanted to talk about Taiwan's rapid changes, including the area of ethnic diversity. Taiwanese tend to pride themselves on high achievement, which I think is partially driven by insecurity about its political status, as a majority of countries in the world don't even recognize it as a country for fear of offending China, who still claim Taiwan as a territory. Rather than hiding in the shadows, many Taiwanese want to prove that they're equal to any United Nations recognized country. Yet, for Taiwan to be considered a world leader, how it addresses an increasingly diverse society will be telling. Taiwanese society has always been multicultural, but as it continues to diversify even more, who will be embraced as part of the Taiwanese diaspora? Okay, for my second excerpt, this is towards the end of the book. Despite my many visits back to Taiwan and its growing familiarity, I still wrestled with my connection to other Taiwanese. My close friends in Taiwan were mostly expats, and the locals I socialized with were connected by our interests in music such as hip hop and Latin jazz that had originated elsewhere. I still felt like an outsider. A trip to Taiwan's southeast side changed all that. Taitung is a short 45-minute flight from Taipei, but you might as well be flying to another country. Taipei is the big city, it's flashy and cosmopolitan, the center of attention. Mandarin is the dominant language. Taitung, on the other hand, is a much smaller seaside city in the south. Taiwanese seems to be the language of choice, which is just the most obvious to the differing cultural and political landscapes. My actual destination on this day was Dulan, which requires another 30-minute drive from the airport. It's so small that I didn't know anyone who'd actually been there, although these days it's a tourist destination for those interested in surfing, art, and a slower pace of life. As I disembarked at the tiny airport, the inescapable tropical heat quickly washed away any comfort provided by the air conditioning, and I could barely contain my excitement. I was about to meet the quote-unquote Bob Marley of Taiwan. This man was like a ghost to me. Nearly every musician I had met in Taiwan had heard of him or even played with him at some point, but establishing direct contact had proven to be tough. We had never even talked on the phone, although we had exchanged sporadic emails over the years. I had once talked to his wife, Biang, briefly on the phone, but that was it. Still, my intuition said that this was the right move. "Welcome home, Wei," said the scruffy head wrap wearing Taiwanese guy I only knew as Red Eye. I could barely suppress a smile to hear this crude Mexican term of affection. He embraced me in a bear hug, and I could smell a familiar mix of sweat, cigarettes, car fumes, and fresh tropical rain as we exited the terminal. Red Eye was wearing the bright yellow, green, and red of a Rasta, and Biang was a slim brown-skinned woman who originally shook my hand while giving me a welcoming smile. She didn't speak much that evening, but her eyes and body language let me know that nothing escaped her gaze. We jumped in a dusty red sedan, and Biang took control of the steering wheel while old-school salsa music came through the speakers. In English peppered with Mexican, Spanish, Caribbean slang, and vulgar Taiwanese words, Red Eye spent the weekend schooling me about politics, reggae music, Mayan farming techniques, and drug smuggling. We even discussed Black women's hair care, all in the context of Taiwan. After nearly 4 decades, my quest to reconnect with my birthplace had reached a turning point.
Thank you, Daniel. That was a really evocative piece. I really enjoyed hearing that. And I think it'll shed, a different view on Taiwan that a lot of people don't have and that they maybe haven't experienced in person, but maybe will become more curious about after reading about it. And also, I was wondering if you can tell people how they can keep in touch with you so that they can find out when your book is available.
Yes, Pochino Press, so POCHINO.com is our website. You can also find us on social media, so Facebook and Instagram is where we're most active. So that's where you can find information. Again, PochinoPress.com.
Okay, thank you so much, Daniel. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for this segment of Kòo-sū, and I hope that you'll be with us again throughout the festival as we introduce you to more Taiwanese American writers. See you later.